everybody, it's Chris from Guilty Words, where we unravel crime one word at a time. Today we're going to take a look at the Manifesto of Luigi Mangione. I want to thank Peggy M. for sending me an email suggesting that I do this video. I didn't have this piece of writing on my radar, and when I took a look at it, I realized it's an incredible piece to analyze. It was put online by a journalist named Ken Klippenstein. The mainstream media has published pieces of it, but not the entire thing as of this recording. It appears that Klippenstein typed the manifesto from a handwritten copy he had, and so there are certain parts that say they're undecipherable and then a few typos. I have presented it in paragraph form, but the manifesto that he put online was all one complete paragraph. For ease of watching it, I've split it up. There's a lot to it, even though it's short, so let's get right into it. Let's begin by reading the complete manifesto and talking about the tone of it, and then we'll go ahead and look at it in more detail for language choice, punctuation, and some other areas. To the feds, I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for our country. To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone. This was fairly trivial, some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, a lot of patience. The spiral notebook, if present, has some straggling notes and to-do lists that illuminate the gist of it. My tech is pretty locked down because I work in engineering, so probably not much info there. I do apologize for any strife or trauma, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming. A reminder, the U.S. has the #1 most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet we rank roughly number 42 in life expectancy. United is the indecipherable largest company in the U.S. by market cap, behind only Apple, Google, Walmart. It has grown and grown, but has our life expectancy? No, the reality is these indecipherable have simply gotten too powerful, and they continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American people has allowed them to get away with it. Obviously, the problem is more complex, but I do not have the space, and frankly, I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument. But many have illuminated the corruption and greed, e.g. Rosenthal and more, decades ago, and the problems simply remain. It is not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play. Evidently, I am the first to face it with such brutal honesty. There is so much in here. Let's start with tone. Look at some of the word choice here. I do respect. I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone. I do apologize. A reminder. I do not have space. I do not pretend. It is not an issue. The tone is very formal, few contractions, and it reads like a prepared speech, not someone who is venting intense emotions without thought, not spewing out ideologies that they've been stewing over for a long time, not blowing off emotions. Compare something like this to the ravings and rantings of, say, a Sarah Boone with her 28 and 48-page letters. This is very tightly written, formal, concise, and yet there is so much packed in here. Let's look at to whom he addresses this letter and how. To the feds. I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for our country. As we just saw, the overall tone is formal, but this address of to the feds with a comma is very informal, almost casual, maybe even flippant. Using the term feds doesn't match his statement that he respects what they do for the country. He would say to the federal agents, to the FBI. Another small point is he uses a comma instead of a colon. With all the formal language in this manifesto, if you wanted to keep that formal tone, he'd use a colon, like you would in a business letter. But here it's to the feds, comma. Almost dismissive. I'll keep this short. In most of the rest of the manifesto, he doesn't use contractions. To keep his formal tone, he would have said, "I will keep this short." But instead, he keeps that slight informal tone as he goes on to, "I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for our country." Even though there's a hint, he may not really mean that. He may be trying to play them along as if he's an upstanding and honest person, and they're all on the same side, and we'll see that with some of his language later. He says, "I do respect what you do for our country." And I'm going to take a moment and look at that construction specifically, because he also says, "I do apologize." But notice before I go to the next slide that for someone that's trying to explain his actions, he doesn't begin with a shout out and his purpose and the usual sort of manifesto language of "this is why I did it." He begins with a focus on himself. "To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone." Out of all of the things he could have started with, he wants to sort of establish a rapport with the FBI, and then the first thing he wants them to know is, "It's just me." And I don't think he's covering for anybody. I think it is just him. He doesn't want any attention distracted by people interviewing his friends. He wants all of the focus on him. Let's take a look at that "I do respect" for a moment. So think in terms of the difference in the way we usually say these words. "I do respect" versus "I respect," or "I do apologize" versus "I apologize." "I do respect," adding that word "do" in there changes it. It has a tone of a deliberate choice or selection, almost like an honor. "I do respect you, but not you. I do choose this, but not that." To say "I do respect the FBI" has a different focus than "I respect the FBI." The "I respect" is clear, direct action. With the "I do respect," the focus is on the speaker, what they do choose. With just "I respect," the focus stays on the verb and the action. In Luigi's Manifesto, he wants the focus on him, and so his formal language keeps it that way. "I do respect," "I do apologize," versus "I apologize." Subtle, but incredibly interesting as we go through this. Let's get back to that first paragraph. This was fairly trivial, some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, and a lot of patience. Nowhere does he say the murder, the killing, the assassination. He uses pronouns instead. "This" was fairly trivial. Again, a dismissive tone. Not like totally trivial, fairly trivial. Was some elementary social engineering. Social engineering is things like phishing attempts, trying to grab somebody's identity or somehow online getting information out of them, and basic CAD engineering to make things look 3D or use on a 3D printer like his ghost gun. For most of us, social engineering and basic CAD are not easy or trivial, but he's letting us all know, for someone as smart as he is, didn't take much. The spiral notebook, if present, has some straggling notes and to-do lists that illuminate the gist of it. This is like a tease to the FBI. The spiral notebook, if present. Maybe it's there, maybe I got rid of it. This is a man who planned this meticulously. He has an engineering mindset. He would know where the spiral notebook is, exactly what's in it, and whether or not it was present. This is saying, there's a spiral notebook somewhere you should be looking for, and I've given you some breadcrumbs, straggling notes and to-do lists that illuminate the gist of my plan. That's all you need to look for. Well, if it's around. Happy hunting. My tech is pretty locked down because I work in engineering, so probably not much info there. The tone here suddenly changes again. This is a very informal statement. My tech is pretty locked down because I work in engineering, so probably not much info there. Pretty locked down, info, very different than this was fairly trivial, some elementary social engineering. Why the change in tone? It brings attention to that sentence. He doesn't say, there's nothing on my computers. He says his tech is locked down, meaning you can't get to it because I'm so smart, I have it locked up so well that even the FBI can't get in there. So probably not much info. Probably not much info. Not, there is no info, I erased it all. Probably a little tease, I've locked it up, and there's probably not much there, but there might be. What concerns me more about this statement isn't so much the teasingness of it, per se, but it's a taunt to get the FBI to start trying to unlock his tech. And given the amount of time and patience he has, I would be worried that as they're unlocking this tech, there's some trap in there, some virus, something. He wants them to start trying to unlock his tech that he is so carefully locked up. I think they better be careful. That's all I'm saying. It just, there's something about the way he's wording that makes me think, yeah, there's stuff in there, but he's waiting. He wants them in there. Let's take a look at his sentence structure. I do apologize, again, that formality, for any strife or trauma, but it had to be done. He has had a classical education and a very expensive one, and he uses commas correctly throughout this manifesto, except when he chooses not to. There should be a comma after trauma, because we're connecting two independent clauses, if you remember your old grammar days. However, he doesn't use it. Why? That's a stylistic choice because it keeps the entire sentence flowing. I do apologize for any strife or trauma, but it had to be done. No pause. No chance to absorb. I do apologize for the trauma. You're right on to it had to be done. And once again, he uses the word it, not the killing, not the assassination, it had to be done. Frankly, and he uses the comma correctly here, these parasites simply had it coming. Pausing before these parasites in this case, after the word frankly, puts the focus on these parasites. But what concerns me more is parasites is plural. These parasites simply had it coming. He only killed one parasite. Why is this plural? Was he planning to kill more? Has he set up to kill more? The plural references come up again in the next paragraph. A reminder, the US has the #1 most expensive healthcare, and he quotes his stats. Interesting here is he says United is the only whatever. The problem I have with, well, I have a lot of problems with this manifesto, but my issue here is the word united. If this is something he's so passionate about, if he's so angry with this particular company out of all the healthcare companies that we have, and yet he calls them United. I've had United Healthcare, I'm aware of them, and they're never abbreviated to United. It's always United Healthcare, I think because United Airlines is just called United. So for him to just say United is the whatever largest company makes me think it's really not all that important to him to be precise about the company. And then even his arguments, some people online are saying his stats are incorrect. and inaccurate. And for someone who's an engineer who's so precise about so many things, it would be odd for him to use outdated stats and just breeze over and casually say United Healthcare. You would expect more precision for the proof of his argument if his argument were the most important thing to him here, and I don't think it is. I think this is a man who wanted to kill and found a cause to justify it to himself, and maybe at the same time make him a folk hero. And we're going to talk about that at the very end. It has grown and grown, but has our life expectancy. This is another issue I have with his argument, besides the fact that he's throwing out inaccurate stats, not addressing the name of the company correctly. There's fallacy in his logic here. The life expectancy of people in the United States is not directly tied to the size of our healthcare system. There are a lot of other things affecting it, including gun violence. So a man like this, who is so methodical and logical and thoughtful, to make a crucial error in cause and effect does not make sense. It's sloppy arguing. And manifestos are supposed to explain why someone took an extreme action. This doesn't explain it. It gets even fuzzier later. No, the reality is these something have simply gotten too powerful. Let's look at this first phrase. Once again, he uses punctuation to affect the flow and focus of his sentence. The comma is grammatically in the wrong spot. It should come after the word no. No, the reality is these something have simply gotten too powerful. Instead, it reads, no, the reality is, then there's a pause and a setup for what follows that keeps the focus on the phrase, these indecipherable. Unfortunately, he may need to work on his handwriting because it defeats the purpose if we don't know what the word is. But these have simply gotten too powerful. The other thing to note is once again we have the plural. Like parasites, these something have gotten too powerful and they continue to abuse our country. It makes me wonder if he didn't have a list of targets and he didn't expect to get caught in rural Pennsylvania. And so maybe there were other people he intended to hurt. They continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it. That's actually a harsh condemnation of the American public, and it undermines his argument in many ways and actually pulls focus from his argument. He's been saying that he's angry with the healthcare system because it's greedy, it's taken away from the American people, and it hasn't improved our life expectancy any. And yet here, he's saying they've gotten away with it because the American public has allowed it. I thought the American public was sort of the general victim here. Now there's an element of blame on the public, that we have allowed them to get away with it. You could say the government has allowed them to get away with it. There's a very strong argument for that. But the American public, how exactly have we let them get away with it? Obviously, the problem is more complex, but I do not have space, and frankly, I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument. Very formal language. And notice just overall, with obviously and evidently like the word no, they should have a comma after them. But he doesn't want to stop the flow of the sentence. I do not have space, and I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument. Or to tell the readers of this manifesto that you have carefully and cold-bloodedly and very deliberately and patiently planned an assassination, to say well, I did it, but I'm not the best person to do the argument. Go read these books. That again brings back that slightly dismissive tone that we heard earlier. I'm not the most qualified. Usually people who are murdering for a cause have educated themselves, or at least think they have, to be the most qualified. They know the most, therefore they know they are the ones who need to take action. In this case, he doesn't want to be the smartest in the room because he can argue about the problems of our healthcare system. He wants to be the smartest in the room because he got away with planning this so meticulously. I don't think this is really about the healthcare system. I think this is about ego. But I don't think it's a random choice of his to pick the healthcare system because it is such a hot topic and major problem in the United States. He says, it's not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play. Power games where? In government, with the healthcare, who specifically? Just the CEO himself? Does killing him mean that it's going to fix the problem? And really, I think that's how he looks at this, is as a game. Because shooting someone in cold blood on a street is a power play. He took the ultimate move, the ultimate power grab. He grabbed someone's life. Evidently, I am the first to face it with such brutal honesty. Like not using the word murder or kill, he uses the term brutal honesty. This is not brutal honesty. This is violence. He doesn't sign his manifesto. I'd love to see the actual page this was written on. I think there's even something we can learn from that. But it's not signed. Maybe he figures everybody will know his name, which actually right now we do. I don't know. Why not claim it? What conclusions can we draw from this? There are several issues I'd like to talk about here, and I'm going to go a little off the usual topic of this channel into some more sensitive social areas, but I think some things need to be said. As far as this particular man and this particular crime, I don't think he's a hero of the masses trying to save people from the abuses of the healthcare system by murdering the CEO. I think he's an egocentric murderer who chose a topic that was convenient for him to practice his skills. Why he chose it, others can figure out. And let me make it very clear before I go on that I do not condone vigilante justice in any form, for any reason. All that being said, the healthcare in the United States is one of our most serious problems. And I think almost every single American can tell you a personal story about something unfortunate that has to do with the healthcare system. Everything from the amount out of pocket it costs to coverage denied, even to lives lost. And I know to people from other countries this seems difficult to understand. I actually encourage the Americans watching this, if you want to put and feel comfortable putting your stories in the comments below, go right ahead. And maybe we need to have a live to sort of share about this. So yes, our healthcare system is greedy. It is not patient-oriented at all. In addition, I've struggled since this first happened with the idea that, yes, I am sorry this man was shot down on a street in New York, but how many people do we hear about being randomly shot, sometimes even targeted for whatever reasons by other people? And yet we're not calling out every law enforcement agency for them. and having national coverage for them. But for this man we did, because he was a powerful businessman. So in some ways, the law enforcement community said he was worth more time and resources than an everyday, ordinary person who was gunned down by someone who was angry with him for something. And that brings on the issues of gun violence as well. I know that right now people are hailing him as a hero and saying, free him, he did a good thing. Murdering another person is never a good thing. When the healthcare system does it, or when someone with a gun does it, he needs to be locked up because he'll do this again. We do need to do something about our healthcare system, but this is not how we get it done. And I know the frustration because government's been promising us for 25 years or more that they would fix it, and they never do because of lobbyists and the fact that the healthcare system is the one that gives money to our politicians to keep them in office. I get it, and I don't have a solution. But what I do know is that this murder isn't the solution. We have to find another way. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this content, please share it with others. Hit the like button and subscribe. We would like to have you as part of our growing Guilty Words family. It's a fascinating, friendly group. This is a hot topic issue. I ask when you do comment below that you please be respectful of people's opinions and thoughts and feelings. And until I see you in the next video, please use your words wisely and well. Take care.